Okay, thank you for coming to this panel session. The idea, as Bridget has said, is that we end up having a really good discussion and you'll direct us where to go with that. I'm Andrew Middleton, and I think Christine proposed a panel session, and I thought, well, that's a good idea. We'll need one or two more people. Let's step up to it. So this is really to open up a discussion. You might challenge everything I say, and that is absolutely fine. Because quite frankly, I don't know. I don't know what assessment feels like where you are and what you perceive assessment to be. But I'm very worried that in a lot of the encounters that I do have with staff, students at this university and elsewhere, that for many people we almost assume that assessment is, I'm not sure whether it's the carrot or the stick, but I'm using that metaphor. Our attitude towards assessment is odd, and I'm not sure it's what it needs to be. So I'm just going to go through a few thoughts in the next 9 minutes that I've got. Now this quote here is a quote that I do recognise, having taught myself at this university, but also I've heard this echoed so often that the students will turn to you and say, well, is this in the exam? In other words, does it matter that I pay attention? Does it matter you want me to learn today? Or does it not matter? Should I be engaged, or should I just focus on something else that may be more pressing for me? That's not to say what is more pressing might not be another aspect of their course, but this question is a bit of a plague. Last year, the reason I wanted to ask this question today is last year I realised a lot of staff were asking a very similar question. And we were designing our curricula so much around assessment. And when 3 or 4 years ago we went through the painful experience of rolling out the assessment framework, I think one of the concerns I picked up on then, and that was a painful time, but I think one of the concerns that we picked up on then was that a lot of staff were kind of suggesting, well, if I can't assess it, then no one's going to turn up, no one's going to engage, no one's going to value it. So I just want to explore this and find out how you perceive it to be. For me, I am an idealist, and I really do put a lot of time and effort and concern into thinking about learner engagement. And I actually understand or perceive assessment to be a wonderful thing. And it's neither a carrot nor a stick, perhaps. So the question of, is this in the exam, worries me, because I wonder if we're denying our students the opportunity to fundamentally understand the joy of being at university, the joy of learning how to learn and enjoying the learning experience for itself, and also as a dimension of their future selves. To pretend that learning happens at university and then we graduate is a very odd way of looking at the world. You know, part of what graduates are people who are capable of critically evaluating the situation they are in and learning from that, and continuous development throughout life, whether that's formal or informal. So we need to know how to learn. And so this is actually becoming quite an important issue for me then, that focusing so much on assessment denies us the opportunity to reflect on ourselves as learners and enjoy learning for its own sake, and the enjoyment of being an expert. I think you can, certainly with summative assessment, you can see evidence that you're becoming an expert or knowledgeable, or you know, there's evidence there for you, and you can see that you know, it's all useful and important. And the formative assessment really should be there to help you reflect continuously through your course as you become this notion of an expert. But the experience of being an expert is when you see assessment seamlessly connected throughout learning, teaching, assessment, and being present as part of a university community. And so if you're denying assessment, an approach to assessment that sort of looks something like that, then kind of you're denying the complexity of the subject itself. And from an ontological point of view, who am I? You're pretending that actually that's a relatively abstract thing to be worried about. That assessment is not abstract, it's concrete, you do it, and therefore things are right and wrong. We need complexity in our experience of university, and that complexity only reflects the complexity of the real world and allows us to become graduates, people who are capable of being immersed in and critical of the world at university and the world beyond. So that also, I mean, I should maybe do induction weeks or something and put those into a bit more coherence, but that's my passion there. But for me, there's a lot of truth there. So why is it difficult? Why is it so difficult to engage students otherwise? Why do we use assessment as a hammer for hitting people over the head with? And Bridget will be giving me a kick when I've just said too much. So I'm just going to keep going. I've got a few ideas. I want to turn to Graham Gibbs, and his name's come up already a few times today. But in fact, David Nicol mentioned these conditions of assessment, and he comes up with 11 ideas. And I've put in orange key phrases within these ideas that I think are particularly pertinent to considering assessment. And I'll just let you reflect on those as they come. I looked at his 11 conditions and realised, I think he probably sets them out this way himself, but the first 4 really focus on the assessment task. So the assessment task, the summative activity, is a very rich opportunity for learning. It's study time, and we can work across topics, which makes assessment much more authentic, relevant, and rich, and understand ourselves to be productive, and people engaged in a deep learning experience rather than only being present on the surface and being instrumental and strategic in the way we approach university. The role for working to high expectations, whether that's expectations we set for ourselves individually as reflective learners, or that our tutors set for us. All of these things are important about assessment. And of course, we are forever hearing about how important feedback is, but we acknowledge that it's a tricky thing to get right in terms of frequency and detail, and turnaround times and so forth. I won't go through those, but these slides are available. But what I want to conclude with on this slide is that we should be thinking much more and talking much more about assessment and feedback as being deep, active, and authentic learning opportunities. By authentic, I mean it is clearly relevant, it's going somewhere, it is probably grounded in active learning, and indeed reflects certainly identity, but a dimension of the world itself beyond the abstract notion of university. Let's look at Bloom's taxonomy and invert it, and just see what this looks like from that angle. And I've sort of subheaded this slide Diving for Pearls, because I think where we really start to experience learning is the deeper we dive, and that's why it's important to move away from the surface. So yeah, a lot of what we do, and it's particularly difficult in some disciplines, you see this, we stick around knowledge and being able to remember and recollect things. That is a trick. That's a trick of the mind. That is a skill that some people have. Medics, sorry, I'm not offending anyone. But there are certain disciplines where actually the real challenge is to remember a lot of good stuff and remember it well. And as we move through Bloom's taxonomy, we need to understand things. Of course we need to understand things. We all need to understand. But a lot of assessment that I hear about seems to reside too near to the surface. We do get to apply it. In a university, a post-92 like Hallam, we are very keen on doing the theory and the application. And I think we know that we do that well. And that particularly works for many of our students in the disciplines that we have here. So application is clearly important. Reflection, analysis is really where things start to tick for us. What did that really mean? And evaluation, David Nicol was talking about the importance of being able to make judgments about yourself and the knowledge that you're encountering. Being able to evaluate is hugely important, and as he says from his research, if you can evaluate something, if you can make judgments about something, then you are probably ticking all the boxes in terms of graduate attributes. So whilst we fuss about the different graduate attributes, the important thing is knowing that you can evaluate. So assessment and feedback and self-regulation of assessment really takes us deep down into this evaluation area. But then we get down to the hidden depths in creativity and synthesis. If we can freeform, if we can play with knowledge, if we can represent knowledge, if we can work with knowledge between peers, between contexts, then we are evidencing how much we really understand our discipline and our subject, in particular knowledge areas. That is what develops us with real-world agility as graduates that are valuable to ourselves, but to the world at large. So again, why is it so difficult to engage our students? And I sort of reiterate, we must develop the joy of learning and see assessment as part of the joy of learning from day one. A lot of these expectations get set before our students even land at university, and I argue that the very first thing we need to do is to engage our students with the idea of assessment being about the joy of learning and as something that is really deep and rich for them. And I'm going to skip right through to the last slide just because it's vaguely amusing. Well, I like this one. So is it in the exam? You know, if we're asking that question, essentially we're testing and we're draining. It's a soul-destroying sort of way of looking at assessment. So don't drain, fill with excitement, and regard assessment as authentic, exciting, and all of those words there. That's me. I'm going to turn to Christine now.
Right, low tech. Right, I'm Christine O'Leary, and I'm based in SBS. My own research area is learner autonomy, self-regulation, and I've done a lot around assessment, particularly relating to portfolio-based assessment. But today I thought I would ask a few questions, because this morning I did a presentation where there was limited opportunity for interaction, and I think the idea of a panel is really to get your thoughts. But one of my questions, which arose after a conversation with colleagues, we were talking about an exam that we were setting, a fairly traditional exam, which consisted of a number of essay questions, okay? 6 essay questions, and the students had to choose one. And the debate was around whether we should have 2 essay questions for the students to do in 2 hours. Because it was felt that doing 1 essay question in 2 hours was giving the students too much, and we weren't testing enough of the knowledge. And that prompted me to think, well, what is the role of time? What is the role of the time, the 2 hours, in relation to that essay? And how different is it when we set an essay for coursework? And what are we testing? When we are designing an assessment, do we think about what we're actually testing? And particularly in exam, what is the function of the time constraint? Because being French, having come from a culture where you actually sat for 4 hours writing 1 essay, and I remember that was just the baccalaureate, and it was philosophy, and I had 1 title, 1 essay to do in 4 hours, and it said, The Value of Sacrifice, comment. Okay? And I was 17. And I spent 4 hours with my value of sacrifice, okay? And you might think, oh dear, you know, how can you spend 4 hours doing that? We give our students sometimes with fairly difficult concepts 20 minutes. 20 minutes to get that essay questions mastered. So ready, steady, go. As soon as the clock starts in this exam, you see them all writing across the question so that they can answer as many as they can. And I keep wondering, but actually, what are we testing? What is it that we are testing by constraining that time? And I don't think, if I ask colleagues, I'm not sure that we get the right answer, but we never question, especially, and as I said, coming from different backgrounds, a different cultural background, it has always puzzled me why, when we have exams, we put so much emphasis on the time, and we try and cram as many essay questions that students could develop into a PhD thesis, never mind you know, a question. And that really, I wanted to hear from colleagues what you thought of that. What is it that you think about when you design exams, for instance, or any coursework? Do you think about the formative aspect of it? Is that important? Do we align our assessment to our teaching, or do we teach to our assessment? Which brings me back to what Andrew was talking about earlier. And that's my question, and I hope we'll be able to answer it as part of the panel discussion.
Thank you. Okay, hello. I'm Hassan. I'm the education officer here. I'll just get my slide show up. Okay, brilliant. So before I introduce myself, I'm not an academic, and I have to warn you about that. All the computers tell me. My kind of presentation is going to be much simpler than what you've probably heard, but I think it's kind of overreaching both of them and kind of putting them into a mix. I am kind of coming from a student perspective, being a student representative, but when I was given this kind of task to talk about it, I think one of the fundamental things what you have to do when you talk about assessment is talk about the purpose of education, because that's inherently what we're trying to assess. So I break it down, so before I broke it down, I thought I'd give you guys a little starter activity. Now if you've done this before, don't share the answer. So very quickly, 30 seconds, can you guys connect them dots with only 4 straight lines? And it's actually much harder than you think, so I'll give you a little clue, think outside the box. So, maybe like 10 more seconds, man. Your academics, time for shots. Okay, we're going to come back to that. So we're going to break down the session. The first one, what is the purpose of education? We're going to discuss that, because you can't talk about assessment without talking about education. And then we'll talk about the purpose of assessment, and then do we assess? Are we actually fulfilling the purpose we originally started off with? So, I mean, it's no good of me telling you what the purpose of education is. I don't know, you're the academics. So I thought I'd kind of open up the discussion here. Like, we kind of spend like 30 seconds talking to the people next to you, and just come to a rationale. What do you think the purpose of education is? I'll give you 20 seconds to do that. If you guys can just share ideas, it's okay. No one bites.
Did you say 20 years?
That's our life.
Education.
Okay, guys. It's worse than my year 7. Okay, guys. Okay. That's 10 seconds. Don't cheat. Right. Okay. Lovely man. Who looks like I've got one? Yeah.
Just talking about future situations, but also gathering knowledge about the present.
Okay. Yourself? Rahel?
I mentioned something about knowledge and skills, but with an eye on the future as well.
Okay. Person on the back.
We say competencies, practice, and education.
Okay. So I'm going to just say what comes into a student's mind. There's 2 kind of perspectives. The first one, need a job. Good education gets you a good job. That's one kind of school of thought. The other school of thought is empowerment. So I get education, I empower myself. Not necessarily for a job, but just I become a better human being. Now we've got that, I want to keep them two purposes in your mind because they are quite far across the spectrum. The purpose of assessment. We're going to do a similar kind of task, and this time 10 seconds and 10 seconds only. So 10 seconds, discuss with your partner what is the purpose of assessment.
Well,
Okay, let's start with an idea from the front. Go ahead.
I'll keep it simple. I also purpose of assessment is to check yourself.
Purpose of assessment to check. Okay, man in the shirt.
I just sort of thought from the student's point of view, assessment must seem quite arbitrary and sort of elitist almost.
What about your point of view as an academic?
Well, I'd agree that it's to check. It's to check understanding and it's to gauge yourself against it.
Okay, anybody got anything different from
Yes.
Hands up strategies being used. Go ahead.
For me, assessment is about learning. Assessment is essentially for learning, because and to transform. It's not so much to check because what you have to learn changes all the time. It's about developing frameworks for learning. It's about learning.
Okay, so.
To encourage people to realise how much they can achieve if they apply themselves to something.
Yeah, okay.
So we were talking about regulations then, a little bit like David was saying this morning.
Okay, right.
Sort of regulation and that.
Again, we've got things from across the spectrum. We see the spectrum in a student's mind. You guys know what this would represent? Any scientists in the room? No, okay. So this was the kind of original kind of theory, not original theory, but it's an application of the theory of natural selection. So I said sometimes students see assessment as it's kind of putting someone into the line of employability. So if you get an A grade, you're more employable than someone with a C grade. In essence, the checking kind of philosophy. Another one is what the colleague Anne said, reflection. So Johnny, I've learned this. Let me reflect on it through my assessment. Again, two very stark different opinions across the spectrum. But don't worry if there's nothing wrong with being on either side, so I'm not picking anyone out. So now we have to come to like a general kind of question that the way we assess, are we fulfilling the purpose of education? Because if the purpose of education is to actually make people more employable, then in essence, then saying that reflection for assessment isn't actually that good, because you actually do kind of like a capitalist approach. You want to actually create people who are the best workers and people who are not the best workers. But that's not the kind of empowering atmosphere, is it? Because when someone gets a D grade and they're demotivated and telling you can't really achieve your dreams, that's not empowering. Now, my understanding, and this is personal opinion now, is that education is meant to be a source of empowerment. Because once you're empowered, you can actually do whatever you want. A source of creativity can make you get a job. And actually, happiness or whatever kind of successful terms that you say isn't just about getting a good job. And I don't think university is about that. And I think a lot of university students would actually want to get to third year that actually I don't want to pursue a career in this particular thing, but actually I had a really strong passion in this subject. That's why we still do the art subjects, the history, arts in times like philosophy. And it's in general of empowering the individual to actually go on and use their imagination and creativity to do whatever they want, expanding horizons as the university calls it. But the way we assess, are we doing any of that? So we do time constraints in exams, as mentioned. If someone remembers the answer 5 minutes later after someone says put the pen down, does that make them less employable or less knowledgeable? Generally, the motivation factor, is it simply wanting just the motivation just being getting a good degree actually the purpose of education? Is that really empowerment? Is that what we really want to achieve? Do we want people who just simply come in motivated with the fact that they're going to get an A grade? And the last one is the forms of assessment. Are we just merely using the old exams and deadlines? Are we expanding around that? Are we allowing students to actually use their own kind of niche? Presentations are another way. Some people find it easier to present something than to write it down. And we kind of look into like the attainment gap situation that we have in universities, where BME students are less likely to get a 2-1 in the first in their degree in comparison to their white counterparts. Is that down to the kind of experiences they bring to their classrooms not being represented in the curriculum and the teaching style? And to finalize everything, I've got a little video which I want to show you. This video is probably, it became very famous. Has anybody heard of the video, Why I Hate School But Love Education? No? Okay, there's probably a generation gap there.
I love a generalisation.
It comes naturally. Okay.
Have you
feel
finished?
so young all of a
Stan, I'm assuming you finished having your work marked.
Right now, there is a kid finishing parents' evening in a heated discussion with his mother, saying, why does he have to study subjects he will never ever use in his life? And she will look at him blank-eyed, stifle a sigh, think for a second, and then lie. She'll say something along the lines of, you know, to get a good job you need a good degree, and these subjects will help you get a good degree. We never had this opportunity when I was younger. And he will reply, but you were young a long time ago, weren't you, Mum? And she won't respond, although what he implies makes perfect sense, that society's needs would have changed since she was 16. But she will ignore him, grip his hand more sternly, then drag him to the car. But what she doesn't know is that she didn't ignore him just to shut him up. She didn't lie because they were just returning from parents' evening and an argument in the hallway would look bad on her resume. She won't lie because she just spent the last 1 hour convincing a stern-faced teacher that she would ensure that her child studies more at home. No, she will lie simply because she does not know any better herself. Although her whole adult life she has never used or applied Pythagoras' theorem, pathetic fallacy, and still does not know the value of x. She will rely on society to tell her that her child, who has one of the sharpest minds in the school, is hyperactive, unfocused, easily distracted, and wayward. Students, how many equations, subjects, and dates did you memorize just before an exam never to use again? How many A grades did you get which were never asked for when you applied for a job? How many times have you remembered something 5 minutes just after the teacher said stop writing, only to receive your results 1 month later to realize that you were only 1 mark short of the top grade? Does that mean remembering 5 minutes earlier would have made you more qualified for a particular job? Well, on an application form it would have. We all have different abilities, thought processes, experiences and genes. So why is a class full of individuals tested by the same means? So does that mean Sherelle thinks she's dumb because she couldn't do a couple of sums? And if this issue is not addressed properly, it then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then every school has the audacity to have a policy on equality. The irony. Exams are society's methods of telling you what you're worth. But you can't let society tell you what you are, because it's the same society that tells you that abortion is wrong but then looks down on teenage parents. The same society that sells products to promote natural hair, looks and smooth complexion, with the model on the box half photoshopped and has fake lashes and hair extensions, with pastors that preach charity but own private jets, imams that preach against greed but are all fat, parents that say they want educated kids but constantly marvel at how rich Richard Branson is, governments that preach peace but endorse wars, that say they believe so much in the importance of higher education and further learning, then why increase tuition fees every single year? I believe Miss Jefferson when she took me into the office and said that my exams would be imperative to my success, because we was taught to always follow when Miss Jefferson led. But then I took Jefferson out of the equation and learned to think for myself. I realized we was taught to always follow when Miss led. The irony. Test us with tests, but the finals are never final, because they never prepare us for the biggest test, which is survival. And what I suggest is fairly outlandish, so I do not expect everyone to understand this, except for the kids who knows what it feels like to be worth no more than that D or that A that you get on results day. And the ones whose best stories were never good enough for the English teacher, because apparently you missed out key literal techniques, did not follow the class plan, and the language was too informal for him to understand. But then he'd reference Hamlet and Macbeth, and you'd fight the urge to express your contempt by partially clenching your fist with only your medius finger left protruding in the middle of your hand, and then asked if he was aware that Shakespeare was known as the innovator of slang, or the kid at the back of the class who thinks, why am I studying something that doesn't fuel my drive? But then when confronted with a maths problem, his eyes come alive. So this one is for my generation, the ones who found what they were looking for on Google, the ones who followed their dreams on Twitter, pictured their future on Instagram, accepted destiny on Facebook. This one's for my failures and my dropouts, for my unemployed graduates, my shop assistants, cleaners and cashiers with bigger dreams, my self-employed entrepreneurs, my world changers and my dream chasers, because the purpose of why I hate school but love education was not to initiate a worldwide debate, but to let them know that whether 72 or 88, 44 or 68, we will not let exam results decide our fate. Peace.
Alright, thank you very much, guys. That's my presentation.
Okay, guys, we've got plenty there. Some contentious stuff as well.
Yeah,
I might
do,
add.
hopefully people.
So we'd like to throw. It's right. I'm floating. I'm still growing. What's just struck me there? I failed my English O-level school and had to go to night school to take it because it was the one O-level I needed to be a nurse. And I look back now at 16 and look at where I am now with a master's, working in education and everything. And that really resonates with me, absolutely. Plus I've got 2 children who will tell you they were forced into university. And when I said to my son, I have never forced you, he said, you have. Your photograph is in the dining room, your graduation photograph. And he said, you don't need to say anything. And I've never thought, it isn't there anymore, it's there. But again, that's a bit of contention. Let's open up for questions. I'm really looking forward to this. I thought it's going to come out of this. Young lady there. I apologise for not addressing you by name.
That's alright, it's Ruth. Exams, I mean, I'm not a massive fan, we don't use them a lot, but in our faculty, the modules that tend to have exams are often those that are not us that's deciding we want an exam, but the professional bodies are saying we want exams, and that is quite common with a lot of professional bodies. So, to some extent, we don't always have control over that, and it's what a lot of the industries are asking for rather than what we as educators might actually want to do. I don't know if anyone's got any comment on that.
Are you in law, by any chance?
No, I mean, we don't have many, but I mean, ACEs and like engineering, for example, have quite a lot.
Law is
we have
stuffed.
journalism, so
The law is stuffed with exams. Even with nursing, the statutory body insists there is a minimum of 1 exam in the nursing curriculum.
I mean, that was going to be my point. It's about what you said, Christine, about testing and the purpose of education about, and you said about needing a job, or is it empowerment, but it is the employers, or as you say in the little video, the society that out there wants some validation of what a student has been doing for 4 years to get rid of the perception that all they do is drink and party, or that negative stereotype. So are we constrained by society? As you say, you know, professional bodies want it, employers want it, and we know, especially in the business area, if you haven't done a placement, if you haven't got a 2-1, they're not even going to look at you, that you can still get a 2-1, a first in an excellent placement, but if you haven't got the right number of A-level points, they're still not going to employ you. So is it that bigger thing? It's those external forces on us that are making us do things we actually don't want to do.
In terms of, I can see the constraints, you know, around exams and things, and I don't know. I mean, certainly professional bodies don't actually dictate the form of the exam. I think sometimes it's because they want to make sure it's an individual's work. But then I think we fall into the trap of doing exams as we did them. And I gave the example of this time factor, which doesn't seem to have any justification, is not used in the same way in other education system, at least the other one that I experienced. And we never, whilst professional bodies might want exams, we never question the format of these exams even. So that's my question, why don't we, and why do we ask ourselves why we do things in a certain way, or do we just replicate what we've done, you know, in our previous education experience?
Do you want to back first, please, Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I'm in education, child and inclusion, and we don't have any exams at all. All our assessments by coursework, which has a different set of challenges come with it. But because everything is by coursework, Bloom's taxonomy, for example, Andrew, there was obviously much less emphasis on remembering because it's coursework, and we're actually trying to assess them differently. But I'm very interested in your comments, Christine. The time issue, I'm not aware of any research that's ever been done looking at our students who have their 4,000-word pieces of coursework to submit each semester, are all short and fat modules. I'm not aware of any research looking at how much time, in a sort of logged way, our students put into a piece of work that they submit for assessment. It would be interesting. It would be interesting to look at their performance against time. But I suspect that the critical thing, from my experience of, because I do a lot of writing support with my students, the critical thing is not sort of, oh, overall I spent 6 hours on that, or overall I spent 20 hours on that. I think the issue is coursework gives students the opportunity to produce a draft. And it's that process of creating a text which you can put away and then come back to and review and develop and think about, which an exam doesn't allow the time for. So we're not asking students to put in their first thought, if you like. So I don't think it's about, you've got 4 hours, off you go. It's about, have you got the space to approach this question and then reapproach it after you've done. And I think, you know, you just don't get that in an exam. But I think clearly mode of assessment has a huge impact on what you're assessing and the purpose, not just how.
There's also the issue, of course, that it could be much harder to write a 1,500 essay than a 4,000 word essay. Absolutely. And one of the bones of contention with me is when we sit and write a module and we arbitrarily pick out how many words it's going to be. How many of us have sat down and tried to write an essay in that many words on the topic we've set? I haven't. Anybody else? Have we tried that 4,000?
But then we're constrained now, as he said about this morning, about we have regulations now.
Absolutely, we have an assessment tariff.
Yeah.
And for an exam.
Yeah.
How many credits dictates how long you get for your exam.
So
point
that sort of
taken.
thing.
I was just going to say, we're a professional degree as well, and we have no exams. It's all coursework and practical exams. And the deeper learning is about it's physiotherapy, so it's about the clinical reasoning and questioning about that rationale and clinical reasoning that we're looking for, that development and that application of the to practice. So we have no written exams.
I'd say there's a bit of an irony here, because one of the things is that, you know, this response, as you put it, Diane, is you know, is the response to Christine's question and other questions about standardisation, word length and so forth. Yet I argued in a very simple way that actually, as Hassun said, it's about empowerment, it's about developing self-esteem, and when a student is with us at university, we need to do whatever we can to develop self-esteem, because actually that's also what our professions want. That's what, you know, that's what we offer when we offer graduates to the world. We offer people who are really capable of engaging with things and doing the right thing because it's the right thing, you know, to put it really simply. So there's a huge dollop of irony here that if you know, the professions are telling us one thing, that we find ourselves very constrained by that. And I think probably the response to this whole thing is to actually take a bit of a stance and engage with our professions and have this discourse. And I wonder actually if the university should have a wee bit of a discourse about this. I'm hoping this session here might actually lead to a bit of a broader discussion. Well, I think we certainly can.
There you
actually.
go then.
Yeah, I think, you know, we are asking a damn good question.
Yeah. Well, let's get that set up then.
Yeah.
We'll get these good folks, and it's a really good thing, because the professional bodies work in partnership with us. They don't dictate. They work in partnership with us to develop courses.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely.
Then, and professionals need to remember that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris first, Karen, then.
Thank you. I'm in history, and the way I've always assessed history is along the lines of what you understand about the past and how you apply it, and also how are you developing as a person, what are your skills being developed, so that you can understand the wider, because about 10% of history graduates go into anything to do with history. The problem in history is that a lot of people set exams for two reasons. The first of which is it has always been done this way.
Yeah.
And the second of which is it is easy to mark. When you have a module with 100 students, you will set an exam because it's easy to mark. It's hard to change those embedded cultures within staff. However, I disliked exams, I disliked setting exams, I never would, because I worry that in something like history you were testing memory more than
you test recall.
And you may know a bit more about this, but I heard something anecdotally that we are causing stress levels in students now because of exams that we get them admitted to psychiatric institutions in the 50s. So why the hell do you do it?
And the number of suicides in university graduates.
Is because of
university students, rather. Actually, the total aside, and nothing to do with this whatsoever, I did my master's dissertation on academic resilience, and sadly that's where the suicide rate work that I did came into it. And at the end of the day, you know, we have quite a bit to do with when the learner does that, and that's a salutary lesson.
Yeah, I thought I'd just mention briefly on the points what you mentioned. So one of the things that we have to understand when we make that kind of transition from exams to assignments is that we have students who've been cultivated for our whole school system with exams. Right? It's only when you get to year 11, year 12 that you actually do an assignment, which is pretty much about 25% of all your grades, so it's not reflective of what you've achieved. So all of a sudden you're thrown into a mix of where you're being told to write a whole assignment of 2,000 words. It's a pretty new concept. Even if you ask them to write a lab report, it's a new concept. And I think more needs to be done to actually prepare students for that transition before we kind of expect them to reflect on that. Where you quickly mentioned on your point first point, which was like standardization of different expectation of points. I think that in many ways education institutions become a reflection of what society becomes. And I think that's when educators and kind of like unions and movements actually kind of fight to actually make what we want society to be. And it inherently does take a lot of pressure. It takes, but inherently, if society recognizes that we are the ones who have the leading knowledge of what education should be and how professions should develop, then like we said, like we should work in partnership to actually reflect that to the professions and actually say, actually, we know better than you because we inherently do that as our job. So we didn't mention.
Yeah, I was going to pick up on what you've just said about, you know, people from obviously different educational, cultural backgrounds, or even, you know, your traditional white 18-year who's come and done a system where, you know, especially for coursework, they hand it to the teacher, they get feedback, they do it again, especially with the middle class, the parents have done it, so by the time it goes for their exam input, it's this perfect piece of work. So they're coming with these expectations. But I think what we've got to remember, assessment isn't just that end piece, it's how you brief the students on the assessment. So the majority of my students are actually international students. And you know, I can spend the whole 2 hours telling them what they have to do in this assessment, and colleagues are going, but you're not teaching them. But I think I am. And then at the other end, when you get, as you said that D grade is not empowering, and on the video he said it is. It's only not empowering when that's all you get, the D grade. So it's not only just the written feedback, but then the one-to-one, the support that you give the student. Okay, this time you got the D grade, this is why you got the D grade, and this is what you've actually got to do about it. And then, you know, if that student is getting that D grade in level 4, that is fine, but if they're still getting it at level 6, then we have seriously failed.
So you look at distance travelled.
Yeah, it's the distance travelled, you know, and I think that is sometimes the issue. The students get when they come here, a lot of them have been high achievers in their school. That's why they've got to university. They don't realise the jump, and certainly I notice when you get them at level 5 and you give them a 50, but at level 4 I got 70. Yes, but you're at level 5 now, and it's managing what we're supposed to be doing.
I think understand that point. I think what I'm going to add to that is that curriculum design becomes really important with this concept. We have a pretty big issue around university where we have assessment, but that doesn't reflect on the journey what we have through education. So you do an assessment in your first year which will have literally no resemblance or no kind of significant kind of connection to the second assessment that you do. And if you were to ask someone, can you remember what you did in first year? Is it any kind of help for what you do in third year? And they're like, no, it's not. In fact, it's just take one as you go, like almost like hurdles rather than actually a journey. And I think that's something which the university has to look at, actually look at the curriculum design from various different aspects of that particular thing, because we are inherently creating something which is just the destination rather than the journey is the destination.
Karen and then Daniel.
Oh yeah, my students they are on a professional course as well, and we tended to say that we don't set exams, but we do really, and phase tests. I know. So it's a bit like we don't do exams, but we do really.
I mean,
and so a lot of our tuition is around what a phase test is and the requirements for that. But it's just a different name for the same thing, in my view.
Also, you don't have to book it at City, and
no,
you can sort it out yourself. You know, there's a little bit of that halfway with the face test.
Yeah, that's why we do it.
I mean, it'd be obscure to actually kind of like conclude that we need to get rid of exams. That's just not going to happen in the foreseeable future. I think what we have to identify is that we've got people coming in with different skills, different abilities, right? Some of them are going to be really good at exams, others really good at assignments, others really good at presentation, right? And you need to give everyone a fair chance of getting the same grade. So even if it means like exam which is 50% and assignment which is 50%, right? And it kind of concludes the overall module, students will feel that's much fairer than actually having an exam which is 100%. So that's maybe something you have to just look into. And of course, we had like presentations and kind of like your own kind of group task, because you've got people within a whole different mix, and each individual has. Some universities have moved towards kind of asking the student, what way do you want to be assessed? And the student will say, I want to sit the exam, or I want to do the assignment. And you know, they go on to do that, and if they don't do well, they've only got themselves to blame in a sense. But yeah, that's kind of the point which you probably have to mention. There's probably another way to counteract the kind of exam or assignment debate.
Damien, for fear of sounding a bit like a Labour leader candidate, I just some observations really over everything that's been said by the panel and the conversations that go on. I think for me, some of it is about students and higher education institutions use different language, but they mean the same thing. I don't think it's about exam versus coursework versus, you know, insert assessment here. I think, you know, and it goes back to what Sam was saying about, you know, what's the purpose of assessment versus what the purpose of education is. That and it goes to what Chris was saying about culture. There's a real dangerous statement in there about assessment and education being different things, and about assessment not being part of an educational journey. And I think, from my perspective, what frightens me, and it goes back to something that was said in one of the workshops earlier on, and it crops up all the time. The whole sector is an issue with assessment in the National Student Survey. We're all, geez, that's it. And the challenge that we have with that is that students say they want something, we change it. And then the next set of students say we don't like that, we change it again. And we've got this cyclical kind of scenario, and it's almost like bell-bottom trousers going in and out of fashion. We you know, it's amazing. And kind of going back to the original thing and saying what Christine was saying, for me, in my head, I write a module, I design a curriculum, and I say what assessment will be most suitable to determine how well students know and understand that curriculum. Yeah. It's not about, well, actually it'd be easier for me to design an exam, although I'm aware of what's going on. And I think, you know, everyone's saying the same things, but actually it's just some work needs to be done to kind of align those thoughts and that language in a way that actually gives people the opportunity to see what the end product is. I'm not sure about the empowerment thing. For me, actually, assessment should validate students' So the empowerment comes from students knowing that they know and understand and can apply the stuff that, as experts, we know that they need to know, understand and apply. So I think that leads to the empowerment, possibly. And that's really rambly, but there you go.
Yeah, that as well. I would not rule out anything out of the assessment equation. I wouldn't even rule out exams, even though, as when I was a student, it terrified me. That everything depended upon success on this day within this time span. You know, freaked me out, and that's why I did fine art, which was a good choice actually. But it has. But anyway, that's another thing altogether. And I'm sure I'm not alone. That assessment can be quite a frightening experience for students, and maybe that's why I wanted to do this. I really want assessment to be a rich and rewarding experience. And self-measurement, self-regulation, and various methods are all pertinent to that. And as you say, Damien, let's look at what we're trying to assess and why we need to assess them, and come up with the right set of options. But I just wanted to pick up on your point about we do tend to be at the beck and call of student expectations and surveys and so forth. And something that I think we need to do as teachers is to develop much more confidence about this. Yeah. Because if we are designing, as you say, if we are designing assessment appropriately, then we should be able to stand up and make the case for that and actually say, look, I'm interested in your feedback, student. It's David Nichol's 7th principle, after all. But actually, in the room today, my job is to be the teacher. And part of my skill as a teacher is to work out the best design, the best approach that will be most beneficial to you and your peers.
So you back that up by saying, well, this is why we're doing this type of assessment as part of your design principles. So if an exam is the best thing, then you make it absolutely clear to the students why it is.
And I agree with you. I mean, the point is we need to ask ourselves why we're setting that assessment. Not be driven by what's been done before, or, you have to have a rationale for your time constraint. You have to have a rationale for what you're asking that in this way. And I think if you've got that, I think you're there.
I think the bottom line is your assessment mode that you use should be the one that best tests the learning outcomes as stated. That's right. I've got a cue, so it's Alison first, then Liz, then this young man.
And just that can be really different depending on your topic area, because in physiotherapy we're trying to get independent, autonomous practitioners. So it's we have a set of skills that they need to be able to achieve that professional competence. However, if you've got something like history, they could do any manner of kind of things in terms of their future employment. So then, how to assess that is appropriate to what their kind of continued development is more of a challenge. It's not more of a challenge, it's a different challenge, because they could be doing all sorts of different things. And so how to choose the right assessment to test, to measure, to look at, to give them some feeling that they're getting to where they need to be in both their course and in their development.
But then we can't assess what we haven't either put as a module or a programme learning outcome.
So that's where
that's what we get the credit for.
Which becomes very difficult. So it is a challenge that we have, and I don't know if there is no right answer.
I think we've had one today actually. Sorry. Well, the quick point that David Nichol made this morning, and it's in a recent paper based upon research he's done recently, in fact it's in a chapter, is this point he made about the best thing we can do for any student, including history students, who know more of a problem than anyone else, but I know what you mean. The best thing we can do in terms of meeting graduate attributes and developing self-esteem is to support our students to make good judgments about themselves. If you can do that,
and
you can pretty much do anything.
Liz.
Yeah, in education, my discipline, we talk about education as transformative, and I think that's the empowerment in a way. So we talk about it as transformational, and sometimes we talk about the instrumental romantic spectrum, if you like, and we've all seen the shift from romantic teachers development through to the instrumental teachers. And we hear about norm referencing assessment. We many of us are of an age when we were norm referenced
Yeah.
and just shuffled into, we can only have this many first and this many 2-1s. So that's what you're getting because you were at the top of this pile that got shuffled. And then we moved away to criterion referencing, which seemed eminently fairer because if we all met the criteria,
Yeah.
we could all get firsts.
Yeah.
And that's what our students know, that's what they've grown up with through the school system, and that's their discourse. But we don't talk about ipsative referencing,
Ipsative is, yeah.
which is ipso as of myself, which is when we assess ourselves against ourselves and our own progress. I think this comes back to the point I made earlier about drafting. You know, are you handing me in the best piece of work that you could possibly achieve on this module, having pushed it through different versions and taken advice? Of course we can't, when we're assessing coursework, we can't read the entire submission. Of course we can't, we've got other you know, limitations on this. But of course we can't do ipsative referencing because of the resource issues. And so with our numbers, with the structure
Absolutely.
of higher education, we do not enjoy the individual relationships with our students whereby we can establish that sort of mentoring, tutoring relationship whereby we can start to begin to assess them ipsatively against
To be great
themselves.
ipsative,
I
wouldn't
suppose
it, to do it?
PDP is our attempt to offer something that looks a little bit like ipsative referencing.
Yeah.
But whilever we are assessing students against something external to themselves, as we are, then some of the things that David said this morning about self-regulation, etc., etc. This is why my students still, you know, they'll listen to their peers, but they want to know what I think, because they know I'm assessing them, and because somehow,
yeah.
you know,
And
how
that's where
can
they
they trust their
paralyse.
peers?
Yep.
So of course we do these things,
Yeah.
but the way that the assessment system is set up at the moment, even as fluid as we make it in my little patch, you've still got enormous constraints, and we're being pushed to be instrumental, not romantic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we've got time for one more.
It's possibly in a bit of an opposing philosophy.
Come on then.
But I'll couch it in a question. What are our views on failure? On students failing?
There's no such thing as failure.
Chris,
in my view,
go
but
on,
there you go.
answer that.
That's what I'm asking about.
Failure is one of my joys.
I didn't put that a different way.
I'm good at failure.
No, I wrote a piece for the Student Education Experience Journal called Failure, which is a viewpoint. And I believe that if we, you can't achieve success if you're afraid of failure, for one. That is one of my overriding goals in telling students that. And I think that we need to essentially empower students to take risks and not worry about the end outcome, but about the journey and the knowledge developed through that journey. And I think if you set up your assessments that you're reflective, while the product may be a failure, the journey can be a success.
Well, that was kind of the part behind my question, because we're not allowed to fail students. It's a refer. It's not
That's right.
failure.
Unless you refer twice.
If you look at pretty much anybody who's ever been vastly successful in anything, the key turning point in their life has always been a failure. Failure seems to be one of the most important things in society, and yet we seem to be driving desperately to stop not allowing students to get to that point.
We could use this, couldn't we? We could use this. We could actually assess the response to failure.
This is, now, two big things. A brilliant paper called Fear of Failure, Friend or Foe, written by Andrew, is it Martin and Marsh, two Australians. Really, really good paper, which bears out exactly what it is you're saying. And the other, a book by John Maxwell, Failing Forward, Stepping Stones to Success, which all talk about that, and actually, don't want to do the one, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, Susan Jeffers, all talking about the same thing. And you'd only got to listen to Stuart Lancaster last night on the, who thinks that England are going to beat Ireland for some whatever reason. But I mean, he's entitled to that, and that's okay. But he talked about the fear of failure.
It is easy though. Harvey and I, Alison as well. I don't know everybody in the room, but you know, we've all worked in the world of sport where you can be really bad, and as long as you win, then so it's the outcome. And in the same way, when I was talking about validating students, a student walks out with their good honours of 60% plus, and they're satisfied that the journey from the day they walked into the building to the day they graduate is the right one.
Success is the
that's
journey, not the destination.
I think I'm the only person in the room who's taught one of Bridget's children. a long time ago. But I was talking to, you know, my parents didn't go to university, so from my perspective, I went because I wanted to. And I failed. I was miserable in my A-levels. I spent too much time drinking and playing sport. So I got out of my way before I went to university. And they backed me and said, well, we believe in you. If you think you can do it, your grades in your A-levels say no.
Yeah.
If you think you can do it, we'll let you go. And then the journey for me was about backing them up, saying, well, thanks for all the support and the money, in effect. And I think, you know, that comes back to the IPSTIF bit, really, in the sense of saying, well, we know that not everyone's going to get first. That's not important, but it's about maximising their chances for them to be the best they can be, and we haven't got that right.
Two very quick ones for Sam, and then you, and then we'll have to wrap up. Missing coffee.
You were saying then, you were talking about empowerment, and I think a big part of empowerment is encouraging people to believe in themselves and take risks. And I mean, I find myself with my dissertation students actually spending a lot of time just getting them to believe in themselves and motivating them to not be afraid of, and because actually I think that sometimes people don't believe they can do it. And empowerment is about, so well, it doesn't matter if you fail, as a way to actually get people to be able to do it and push through the fear barrier and remove some of the fear of that.
It's part of us not being part of the problem when the student's afraid of failure. Often we're part of the problem instead of the solution as a tutor, and that's downright wrong. Sam, last word to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're quite right in saying that, you know, just because you get a 2, 2 or 3 degrees doesn't mean you're not going to be successful. I mean, J.K. Rowling got a 3rd in her degree, and being one of the most successful writers in history. But, you know, I think the general kind of concept, I thought, I came across a quote of Albert Einstein, and I was about to put it in my presentation, but I thought not to. Was basically, everyone's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, you're going to hold it more likely it's stupid. And I think that's a way of
That's all right.
Can we leave it there? I really do reckon that everyone is a genius. We're going to have to find out. So that's our challenge for assessment. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.